So Monday and Tuesday we were working on adjacent angles and vertical angles. So what do we need to know about adjacent angles? Somebody tell me what we need to know about adjacent angles. Krill, what do we need to know? They're next to each other. They're side by side. They're neighbors. And you can tell they're neighbors because they share a side or a ray, right? So this angle 1 and angle 2 are adjacent. Are they congruent? Do they have to be the same size and shape? No, they can be, but they do not have to be. All right. And then we learned about vertical angles. What did we learn about vertical angles? Somebody tell me vertical angles. What's important to know? Marcus. Yes, they're directly across from each other. Directly across from each other. What else is important to know about vertical angles for us to do some math with it? Ava L. They're congruent, and congruent means same shape and same size. So if you know the measure of one of them, then you know the measure of its vertical angle directly across. All right, questions about those two? Okay, so those are vocabulary words that you should know. If I say adjacent angles, you should be able to say they're side by side, they're next door neighbors, they share a side or a common ray. Vertical angles, if you see vertical angles, you should know they are across from each other and they are congruent. And you should know that congruent means same shape, same size, so you can do some math with it. So now we're going to add 3 more vocabulary words. Let's start down here with complementary angles. Any two angles whose sum is 90 degrees. Any two angles. So the easiest way to draw this is to just start with a 90-degree angle, because these have to add up to 90 degrees. So draw a 90-degree angle. Kind of hard to draw them perfectly. And then if it has to be 2 angles, just draw a ray in there somewhere. Just draw a ray. So angle 1 and angle 2 are 90 degrees. So if we said those look pretty much like they're congruent, I kind of split it right down the middle. So if we said that angle 1 is 45 degrees, oops, put a 1 in there, angle 1. And then if I said that angle 2 is 45 degrees, if I add those up, what should they equal? 90 degrees. Any two angles that when you add them up, you get 90 degrees. Those are complementary angles. So I could have had 65 degrees and 25 degrees. I could have had 70 and 20, 60 and 30. Any two angles that when you add them up, you get 90 degrees. Does that make sense? Yes, that's just a vocabulary word that you need to know the definition, and then you can do the math. All right, supplementary angles. Any two angles whose sum is 180 degrees. So 180 degrees is what kind of angle? What do I need to draw here? A straight line, a straight line. So if I'm going to draw supplementary angles, the place to start is a straight line. And then just split that straight line somewhere. And then I know that those two angles are supplementary. So if this is angle 1 and this is angle 2, so angle 1 is an obtuse angle. That means I need to, if I'm going to just hypothesize its measurement, it has to be greater than 90 degrees, right? So let's say it's 120 degrees. That would make angle 2 60 degrees. Because when I add them up, what do I have to get? I have to get 180 degrees. questions about supplementary angles? No? Okay. All right, linear pair. Two angles that are both adjacent and supplementary. Adjacent and supplementary. So, there are two angles that are side by side, and supplementary means when you add them up, you get 180 degrees. They form a straight line. So, these are also a linear pair. These are supplementary angles, and they are a linear pair. So, the only thing that we need to draw here for an example is just another pair of supplementary angles. Straight line. Split it somewhere. These are a linear pair. So, angle 1 and angle 2. Angle 1 plus angle 2 have to equal 180 degrees. So, whenever you have supplementary angles, they are also called a linear pair. So, are these two things basically mean the same thing? Yes. So, these are all vocabulary words that you should be learning. I sent out a remind message. What's today, Wednesday? I sent out a remind message on Monday with a link to Quizlet with all the angle vocabulary that you need to learn. So if you click on that link, you can start studying them on Quizlet. Flashcards, games, practice quizzes. It's also in your Google Classroom. So anytime you have some downtime in a class, just click on that link in Google Classroom and you can start studying those. Okay? All right, so this little orange paper down here, we're going to put down at the bottom. These are some hints that you can use. I'm going to trim mine just a little bit to help you remember the difference between a supplementary and a complementary angle or pair of angles. So just glue this down here in the bottom of the page. Kind of leave some room on both sides. We're going to do a little bit of writing. All right, so the S in supplementary. S, you can think about that if you drew this little dotted line right there, it turns into an 8 to help you remember 180 degrees. So the S in supplementary, if you think about that as the 8, that can help you remember 180 degrees. So we're going to say the S turns all right. And then the C in complementary, if you put a line right there, the C turns into a 9 to help you remember 90 degrees. Matt, you got these in your journal? You have it all written down? All right. Anybody need more time on this one? Okay. We'll wait just a couple more seconds. Then we're going to turn the page and look at that green foldable from Monday. There's 2 of those flaps that we need to complete on complementary and supplementary angles. Okay, anybody still working on this? All right, let's take a look. All right, so we've done these two last flaps down here on adjacent and vertical. So let's start here with complementary angles. So here is a picture of a set of complementary angles. And we said that complementary angles have to add up to 90 degrees. 65 plus 25 is 90 degrees. So angle WXY. WXY. So what's the measure of WXY? 65 degrees. And then we have angle YXZ. What's the measure of angle YXZ? 25 degrees. And when I add those up, you get 90 degrees. So you would say that angle WXY is complementary to angle YXZ. So the definition is two angles whose measures have a sum of 90 degrees. Sum means you add. A sum of 90 degrees. Make sure you're using your degree mark. So here's another example. These two angles are complementary. How can I tell they're complementary? Just from the picture. It's a 90-degree angle that is split. And so if I know that one of them is 30 degrees, and I know together they are complementary, that means they equal 90 degrees, how can I figure what x equals? So we're going to start setting these up like an equation, and we would say that 30 plus x have to equal 90 degrees. So then you would subtract 30 from both sides, and you're left with x equals 60 degrees. Is there a question, guys? No? Y'all are okay? Okay. All right. Anybody need more time on this problem? Okay. Okay, let's look at supplementary angles. Supplementary angles. I can tell these are supplementary because they're two angles that are side by side and they form a straight line. They would also be called what? What besides supplementary angles? They are also a linear pair. The word linear means what? What's the base word of linear? Line, right? So a linear pair is a pair that makes a line. I can tell that because this straight line right here, and it's just split by this ray. So if I add those two things up, what should I get? 120 plus 60 should be 180 degrees. And that is what makes them a supplementary pair. So angle HIJ is supplementary to angle JIK. HIJ is supplementary to JIK. So the definition is two angles whose measures have a sum of 180 degrees. So the example, these angles are supplementary, x and 135. You could say x plus 135 have to equal 180. Subtract 135 from both sides, and you're left with x equals 45 degrees. So get this math down here, and then we will look at the next page of practice problems. Let's look at the top of these notes. Complementary angles. What we've been saying is two angles are complementary if they add up to 90 degrees, which is a right angle. If angle A plus angle B equals 90 degrees, then angle A and B are complementary angles. So here's some examples. 60 degrees and 30 degrees, 80 and 10. Are 20 and 30 complementary angles? 20 plus 30 is 50, so they are not complementary angles. So these practice problems. Solve for the missing complementary angle. 45 plus x equals 90 degrees. So we would subtract 45 from both sides, and you are left with x equals, what's 90 minus 45? 45 degrees. So x equals 45 degrees. All right, let's look at the next one. X plus 32 degrees equals 90. So if we want to solve for x, we need to subtract 32 from both sides, just like we did in our algebra unit. And you are left with x equals 90 minus 32, 58 degrees. Last one, 80 plus x equals 90. Do I even need to write my equation? What's x equal? 10 degrees, right? 80 plus 10 is 90 degrees. So x equals 10. Everybody okay with those? Seem pretty easy? So the hardest part of these is remembering if there's not a picture and if they just say complementary angles, you have to just remember the 90 degree part. Okay? All right, supplementary angles. They add up to 180 degrees. Here's some examples. 150 and 30, 80 and 100, 70 and 90 add up to 160, so they are not supplementary. So let's look at these practice problems. Angle x plus 75 equals 180, so subtract 75 from both sides. And you're going to have x equals 105 degrees. X plus 50 is 180, so subtract 50 from both sides. And you are left with x equals 130 degrees. And the last one, x plus 45 equals 180, so subtract 45 from both sides. And you are left with x equals 135. So 135 degrees. All right, let's look down here at the bottom, and all we're going to do is determine if they're complementary or supplementary. And all we have to do is write the C or the S. You don't have to write the whole word. So if one angle is 50 and one is 40, what are they? Complementary or supplementary? 50 plus 40 is 90, and 90 is complementary. 35 and 145? Just shout it out when you know. Supplementary. I already knew they couldn't be complementary because this one is 145. That's higher than complementary immediately, right? 20 and 70, complementary. 65 and 115, supplementary. There you go, you're getting it. 80 and 100, supplementary. 75 and 15. There we go. 60 and 120. And 65 and 25, complementary. All right, questions about the difference between complementary and supplementary angles? No. Okay, so we're going to glue this on page 95 if your pages are the same as mine. '95. Oops. Zooming in the wrong direction. All right, so we left 4 pages blank at the beginning, right? So that's 86 through 89. Can you see that color? Do I need to go a darker color? So 86 through 89. I can statements. Now it looks blurry. All right, and then on '91. Are we 91? 91 is angle relationships. Okay. 93 is an angle foldable. And then 95 was just complementary and supplementary. Once you get caught up, we're going to look at the skills practice. On the skills practice, yes. Okay, hang on just a minute. 1 through 9. 1 through 9, all you're going to do is identify if the angle pairs are complementary, supplementary, or neither. Okay, so I might, at the top of my paper, supplementary with an S. Remember, if I turn that S into an 8, what is supplementary? 180 degrees. Complementary with a C, if I turn that into a 9, what is that? 90 degrees. So I might write that hint on the top of my paper. So number 1, what would you say they are? Supplementary. What about 5? What would you say 5 is? Can I prove that they're supplementary? Yes. How? Add them up, 126 and 54. So they are supplementary. What about 8? Neither, because 49 plus 49 is 98. .98 degrees, so it is neither. Okay, that's what you're going to do on the top section. Okay, the bottom, algebra, find the value of x in each figure. This is where this is going to start getting a little bit more difficult. So you have to find the value of x. So this is where our algebra unit is going to come in handy. So, I know if I cover up this part right here, I can see that those two angles, that one and that one, are what? Complementary. I know that supplementary. And supplementary angles add up to 180 degrees. So I would say 3x plus this 18 have to equal 180 degrees. Then do I know how to solve that two-step equation? Yes, what's the first thing I do? Subtract 18 from both sides. And you're left with 3x equals 180 minus 18. So 162. $162. And then what do I do? Divide by 3, and you're left with x equals. So 162 divided by 3 equals 54. So then, if it asked me what the measure of this angle is, what would be the measure of that angle? Would it be 54? Would it? 54 plus 18 would equal 180? You would have to multiply. If it asked me the measure of this angle, well, 3 times 54, well, we have that right here, is 162. So if it asked me the measure of that angle, that's 162 degrees. And that one is 18, because together they have to add up to 180. So be careful as you're working on these problems to make sure that you're answering what it is it's asking you for. All right? I'm going to let you give these a try. If you have a question, come check in with me or Coach Baker, or if you're watching this later, Mr. Millwood. And work on it front and back, and let us check it when you're done.